For Global Ethics Day 2018, Carnegie Council staff and affiliates discuss ethics in action.
The major ethical issue, as I see it, is the fact that we are producing greenhouse gas emissions, which cause environmental, social, and other impacts, first of all, to different people living today in different parts of the world. So we have an interregional challenge, but it's also causing those impacts to future generations not yet born. So we have an intergenerational problem. And that is a fundamental question, fundamental ethical issue of climate change. Now, geoengineering is just one of many tools to fix the problem of climate change. So we have the similar problem of using or not using these technologies, because either by using them or not using them, there will be impacts both in the different parts of the world and on future generations. And we need to have some level of ethical understanding of what do we do about that. So an ethical policy would have to take into account all people who will be impacted by the policy of today, which means also future generations. How you do that, there are different ways of doing that, but we have to find a way to include future generations in the overall analysis and the overall policy action. As a start, let's start with the youth of today, who will live through also in their own lives. But it's not just the youth, but it's also going beyond. So ethical issues have to include this intergenerational questions, but also we have to make sure that we understand what will be the impact of our policy on some faraway location in the Earth today. And that is very true for example, for some of the potential geoengineering options that people are talking about. They could indeed perhaps contribute to solving the climate change problem, but if they create some social environmental impact somewhere else, then we have a problem. Well, there are quite a lot of civil society organizations that actually are very much focused on these ethical issues in their work, talking about climate justice in terms of different generations, climate justice across different geographical zones. So we see that happening quite a lot. What we also see to some extent intergovernmental agreements that are fundamentally, there are elements of ethical values because they do, in theory, care about the others, the future generations. What we don't see enough is how far that goes in terms of the practical policy actions that we would like to see everywhere. First of all, what does leadership look like and how does it become moral leadership? And unfortunately, in today's world, we don't see sufficient leadership to start with. And that is perhaps part of the problem. But even when there is leadership, what makes it perhaps moral leadership is where you focus on these ethical issues explicitly and say, we need to engage because our brothers and sisters on the other side of the world are going to be impacted and affected. Or we need to engage in this because if we decide to do this kind of solar geoengineering, for example, then we may commit future generations to doing this for a very long time.